So this is going to be a new type of video that I'm going to be creating based on just what I think are interesting characters. I'm going to focus on one character. In this case, it's Peacemaker. This figure is by Hot Toys. It is based on the 2022 HBO show, um, and which was kind of a follow-up to the movie Suicide Squad. And the character was played by John Cena. So this is a really, really gorgeous figure. And I'll talk about it later, but not in this video. So Peacemaker as a character was created in November 1966 in a comic book called Fightin' Five. And it was issue number 40 from Charlton Comics. Charlton Comics went out of business and it was acquired by DC Comics in 1983 for $5,000. They acquired all the characters. And in 1986, Alan Moore decided to write Watchmen using the Charlton characters. Now, at the time, DC was it was kind of a precursor to the multiverse, which is they would have different Earths. So, for instance, the Fawcett characters were on Earth S for Shazam. They were separate from the main DCU. And in Crisis on Infinite Earths, they decided to merge all of these Earths into one Earth. So, Alan Moore wanted to use these characters, and DC said no. And the reason was because, based on the plot, they figured that Alan Moore was going to ruin the characters that they had just acquired for $5,000. So, what Alan Moore did was he simply created his own kind of parallel characters based on the Charlton characters. The Charlton characters, almost none of them had any superpowers. The only one was Captain Atom, and he was quite powerful. So for Captain Atom, he became Dr. Manhattan. Rorschach was based on a character called The Question. And in the case of Peacemaker, he was based on a character uh, or Peacemaker was turned into the comedian. And I will say one thing: the comedian of all the characters in Watchmen is probably, I would say, the most obvious villain. He's not the villain of the story because he dies right at the beginning, but based on flashbacks, he is a terrible person, a sociopath, and works for the government. So why would they turn a Peacemaker into Rorschach or into a comedian? So the original Peacemaker was a character named Christopher Smith, who was a pacifist diplomat who used force to advance the cause of peace. And at some point, and I'm not sure who, there was kind of this revelation of this idea of peace through force, and the irony of it. Now, I believe he did not use any weapons, but he would use his fists. However, over time, the character changed into something else, and it what was very interesting is if you take a character like Vigilante or the Punisher, which is a very well-known character, their motivation is pretty simple, which is they want revenge for some kind of some act that occurred, some transgression, and they will use violence and killing to achieve that end. Um, Peacemaker was a bit different, and so over time they changed the character so that there was a background in his story that he was abused by his father, and particularly in the television show, it really kind of fleshed this out, that his father produced him into this kind of killing machine. And so what was interesting, and what I really like about James Gunn, is he's able to create kind of a humorous side to a character, but then also at the same time something very serious. And I would say that with Peacemaker, this kind of clash was the most acute because in many cases he was a humorous character in the Suicide Squad. At one point, he says to the Ratcatcher, "I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it. And it's funny because she turns to the polka dot man and she says, I thought you were the crazy one. And he says, I am. But the way he says it, the way he delivers that, it's like, oh my God. It's weird because this guy's saying, I will kill anyone who stands in the way of peace. And in some sense, it is said in a way that would invoke humor, but also kind of just a feeling of being appalled at this idea. And at the end of the movie, he is so kind of is similar to a comedian. He does what he's told to do. The government tells him what he is to do, and in the case of the Suicide Squad, protect a secret. And so he ends up killing his partner. I mean, it wasn't a longtime partner, but partner in this mission, Colonel Rick Flag. And Colonel Rick Flag's dying words are, Peacemaker, what a joke. And he's not saying that Peacemaker is a joke. What he's saying is the idea of Peacemaker, the idea that he is someone who wants peace, is a joke because he's a murderer. And so what was interesting was in the HBO show, which I highly recommend, it was sort of a redemption arc for him because at the end of Suicide Squad, he was definitely shown to be, if not the villain, a villain, because he was willing to kill his own teammates. And it wasn't just Colonel Flag. He was ready to kill anyone to protect the secret that he was instructed to keep. And so he's a very complicated character. And the HBO special does not, because it was also done by James Gunn, there are references to what he did to Rick Flag. And the show is, again, very much kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a lot of humor in it, but there is also a lot of seriousness in it. And you get to see sort of the torment of the character. His father has a prominent role in the movie, and you could see how abusive he is, even as the Punisher is a full-grown adult. He's still mentally abusive to his son. And so again, the Punisher is a very, I mean, I haven't really read much of the Punisher, but he comes off as a very simple character to understand. Whereas the Peacemaker is very complicated. And so I've read other stuff, and a lot of writers will do their own thing. In one series, I think it was a 4-issue series, it took a very humorous approach, but again, there were serious parts in there. And in the HBO television show, you can see scenes in there where he is just torn apart by the things he's done, particularly in killing Colonel Rick Flag, which at the time in the movie, he seemed to be he wasn't happy to be doing it, but he was prepared to do it, and he was ready to do it, and he did it. And so I think that Peacemaker, he's the kind of character where I would love to see a writer like Tom King do a 12-issue special. I think that would be magical if he did something. And I know a lot of people don't like Tom King. I'm a huge fan of Tom King. But it's a really, really interesting character that could be analyzed. And just this idea of his peace through force. But you could tell in the show he grows a lot. And the season 2 is coming out soon. So it's going to be interesting. I don't have HBO, but I did buy the series on Blu-ray. So if I get to watch it, it will be quite a ways away. But definitely Peacemaker, it may be, in my opinion, he might be the most interesting character in DC right now. But I'd be curious as to other people's thoughts on the character and if they like him or not.